Sausage.
Hello everyone, this is Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Mark Kuznets, tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This episode is all about Transformers War for Cybertron, a third-person shooter set in the Transformers universe before they made their way to Earth as a civil war between the Decepticons and Autobots erupts. I've heard many great things about War for Cybertron throughout the years, often referred to as Transformers Gears of War and missing but not missing any of the cringeworthy human interactions. Expectations were high. In many ways, War for Cybertron met my expectations, and yet it somehow disappointed at the same time. For better or worse, War for Cybertron is a Gears of War clone, with a tight, close-up, over-the-shoulder camera and gameplay mostly around shooting waves of mindless enemies. It's easy to see why the comparison was made in the first place. This isn't inherently bad since Gears of War is, pretty good. However, while War for Cybertron takes a lot of inspiration from Gears, it doesn't always take the right parts. Many versions of the Transformers are bright and colorful. Regardless of whether they're trying to tell a more serious story or a lighter, more fun story, Transformers are often at least visually stimulating and pleasant to look at. This is not the case with War for Cybertron. War for Cybertron suffers from a bland and desaturated palette that makes the experience exhausting because everything ends up looking the same. From allies to enemies, indoors and outdoors, everything visually oppresses with its lack of color and lack of life. That may seem fitting given the more serious story and the fact that they're robots and not living but living. I don't know how Transformers work. There's no reason why a game can't be both serious and colorful. Not to mention the fact that the 1986 animated movie was very serious while also being very colorful. Then again, this is from the Xbox 360 generation, and bland, lifeless visuals were kind of that generation's jam, so maybe it's just a time and place thing more than anything. While I can forgive War for Cybertron for its lack of color, it does look good and holds up well when you get past this, though at least on Xbox 360 the resolution takes quite the hit when a lot of action is on screen. I can't forgive some of the baffling choices surrounding gameplay. What on earth were they thinking with the ammo system? In a game where you do a lot of shooting and enemies, even on easy, take a lot of bullets to go down, you're going to need ammo pickups quite frequently. Knowing this, it would make sense for enemies to drop ammo upon death, right? Well, sense is nowhere to be found since the only way to refill your guns is by finding ammo boxes scattered around the environment. This would be fine if ammo boxes were plentiful, but they're not. Exacerbating the problem is the bland visuals that make ammo boxes hard to spot in a crowd. This led to more than a few occasions where I'd have to take leave from a battle in order to try and find an ammo box here or there. This was annoying. What makes it even more annoying is that there are multiple solutions to this problem. The most obvious solution would be enemies dropping ammo upon death. If they didn't want to go that route, maybe throw out the concept of ammo altogether and have weapons work on an overheating/cooldown system, since you are, after all, playing as giant transforming robots, so why is there even traditional ammo in the first place? Would it not make a lot more sense thematically to throw out ammo in favor of overheating while also fixing the ammo problem at the same time? That said, ammo problem or not, War for Cybertron also suffers from an AI problem. Whether foe or friendly, AI leaves a lot to be desired. Enemies never attack in clever ways or make any attempts at utilizing strategies, and friendly AI teeters between completely useless to what the fuck are y'all even doing? I don't know what was going on, but the friendly AI on the Autobot side was especially stupid, with my two AI teammates often getting stuck doing God knows what as I continued down the path towards another enemy encounter, only to realize when shit hit the fan that my AI teammates were still hanging out miles away because they couldn't be bothered to join in the fight. This would be extra annoying if they weren't useless in a fight, but regardless of combat efficiency, it was still annoying to regularly find myself alone in a firefight. There is, of course, co-op to make up for this. However, at least for the Xbox 360 version, all multiplayer components are dead thanks to dead servers and no way to play locally via split screen or LAN play. Another bit of weirdness is the revive mechanic, which was nowhere to be found during the Decepticon campaign. After completing the Decepticon campaign, which makes up the first 5 of 10 chapters, though I do think you can start with the Autobot campaign if you wanted, I was surprised when a revive mechanic was introduced in the Autobot campaign. I can only assume this is meant to show how Autobots care about the Transformers fighting beside them and Decepticons only care about themselves, but it still feels weird to have such a mechanic show up for the first time when you're halfway through a game. That said, outside of one moment where you have to protect an AI while they're trying to complete a task and will likely have to revive them multiple times during, there are very few instances where you will get the opportunity to save a fellow combatant, Autobot or Autobot auto not. Continuing down the disappointment train, weapons are uninspired and often lack oomph, especially the shotguns, which I rarely use. And despite being able to freely transform into vehicle form at any time, there are rarely times during regular gameplay where transforming makes sense, though this won't stop your teammates from transforming for a second or two, only to immediately transform back since there was no point transforming in the first place. If not for a few sections designed around being in vehicle form, it would have made more sense to remove the ability altogether in favor of expanding combat with more abilities and the like. Though, if there's no transforming in your game, can it really be called a Transformers game? Probably not, which is likely why the ability is there. I'm sure there are more things that annoy me about War for Cybertron I could bring up if I thought about it more, but I think I've dumped on the game enough. Don't get me wrong, War for Cybertron is not a bad game, but it's not a good game either. It's fine. However, when I've had years of praise to build it up in my head, it's hard not to see all the flaws and wonder why they weren't a big deal back in the day. And if they were a big deal, they somehow never crossed my plate. That said, most of my issues with War for Cybertron are issues I could have accepted as dated design and been fine with, except the ammo thing. It's the ammo issue that can't be accepted or forgiven, and because it's a constant issue, it exacerbates everything else around it. I haven't looked into Fall of Cybertron to see if any of my issues were addressed and fixed, but I can only assume and hope that war was needed in order to help Fall rise, and even though my time with War for Cybertron was ultimately disappointing, I'm still hopeful and excited about Fall of Cybertron. If nothing else, at least I got a solid Transformers story that made me, the non-Transformers fan I am, mildly interested in the lore and backstory of the Transformers and their world, something I've never been, and I'll take that as a small victory in what was ultimately a pretty meh time. Anyway, that will do it for this here episode of Attack the Backlog. Once again, I am Marcus Nez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. The site, the YouTube, the Patreon, and all that jazz can be found over at pxsausage.com. But that's enough of that. So as always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. So for now, adios, arrivederci, bye!